Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. As always, this is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank you for choosing to fly over the friendly airwaves with us here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Well, folks, without any further ado, let's go ahead and delve into the topic that I have selected for this program. Folks, it's gotten pretty interesting with respect to what's happening with the Democrats' agenda. This is because, once again, they've fallen into a pitfall that they weren't expecting. The Democrats have really stumbled, and it is showing. Basically, none of the agenda points that they have set up for themselves and which they had hoped to accomplish during this first year of the Biden administration has managed to come to fruition. It has just been failure after failure after failure. And that too shows no signs of improving at any point in the foreseeable future. Again, that is a Biden misstep. Biden screwed up. There's no way around it. And it's funny because the first episode that I put out for today, we covered how Biden was essentially sitting there saying that he had overperformed or over-delivered, or basically gave everything that he was going to push for, everything that he had promised, and yet that's not what happened. It's not what happened because the Democrats couldn't get their agenda through because it was too left-wing. It was too radical. It was too extreme. We could see this with all of the deplorable outcomes that have been running through to the American people time and again, with inflation, with skyrocketing gas prices. And I know it's like a broken record on everything, but it's because this is what their policies produce. We had warned time and again that this is what the Democrats' failed policy positions would create, but it just, apparently some people didn't make that connection. They wanted to believe in their heart of hearts that Biden was a good man, and yes, he's photogenic, and maybe that's part of it. He's got a good smile. But that good smile hides the corrupt core of him. There were facts about him that were hidden and that the legacy media played along with because they had their own agenda and that they were ready, willing, and able to pull out all of the stops in order to ensure that that came to fruition. And we see what happened. They covered for Hunter Biden. They covered for all of the rank corruption that is this administration. That is, everyone within this administration, and they did it without as much as a second thought because they knew that that was what they could have. And you see, it's with that we have the rank corruption that has been with us for far too long. This is part of the plan. It was part of the agenda. They thought if they pulled the wool over the eyes of the American people, they could continue to ride the gravy train as though nothing had changed, as though the world was continuing to operate the way they thought it was. And you can see it. Look at how they have doubled down on their radical policies, and yet it's a money-making scheme. It's always been about money. Follow the money trail, and that's where you'll wind up. And it's interesting because I saw on Crowder yesterday an interesting point that he made, one that I think is quite prevalent, particularly given where we are in modern America. He said, where are these lefty crusaders with respect to essentially their complaints against big anything? Remember, in years past, the left had always been against big pharma or big oil or big energy or big auto or big labor or whatever. Not big labor, but big industry, big private companies, big anyone being able to essentially be autonomous. Yet, they don't ascribe these same characteristics that are part of human nature to big government. Big government can't be corrupt. Why? Because it's a religion. Honestly, it has become a religion to them. That is why they are so hell-bent on getting rid of any of the moral foundations that have propped up and built and guided this republic since its inception. It's because they have their new idols. Their new idols are the government and the statist actors who have essentially paved the way for their insane ideology. But there reaches a point where it has to basically run into the facts. It has to meet facts. And where the rubber meets the road, that's where things start to change. And where have they been pressing the hardest? Well, ladies and gentlemen, they have been pressing the hardest on Manchin, and to a lesser extent, Sinema. Sinema she's the best way I think I could describe her is as a typical politician. She's very self-interested, and so she'll throw anybody and everybody under the bus if it will in any way, shape, or form boost her standing, boost her position. And that's what she's about. It's what she's always been about. But she understands her voters. Arizona is not a typically left-wing state. Yes, they have their own corruption problem from the McCain wing of the Republican Party, and that's essentially what Sinema is. She reflects what McCain really was, and to the party, and belongs to the party, rather, that he really represented the interests of. But with respect to West Virginia and Manchin and Arizona and Sinema, and all 50 Republicans in the Senate staying the course, we see that a major defeat has been handed to the Biden administration. And this comes to us from the New York Post, and it's by Julie Grace Burke and Mark Lungariello. What wonderful names. Sorry if I butchered them. But anyway, the Senate votes down filibuster change as Manchin and Sinema side with Republicans. An effort by Senate Democrats to change the filibuster rule was knocked down as expected on Wednesday night in a tense floor vote that saw 2 Democrat moderates side with all 50 Republicans. Now, I'm going to part with the article here and disagree with the article here, because I do not believe that Sinema is a moderate. I just don't. Her Marxist tendencies in the past, the positions that she's held in the past have all been far left-wing. But she understands her constituency, and that is why she has moderated her position. She is a wolf in sheep's clothing. She is a classic Fabian. She fits into the model of a Clintonian-style Democrat, one that can bamboozle her intended target, thereby allowing her to gain more power. And that's the way the Democrats used to be. The way that they're playing now with this rabid, fomented, leftist face that's just out and nitty-gritty in your face without relent, that's new. That's something that has not been in their quiver of arrows in the past. And it's working against them. The squad type is working against them because it's, in a sense, confining them to the most radical elements. And of course, this is what they have always wanted. But the Fabian approach has always been that of incrementally drawing someone out to outflank them. And that's not what this more radical fringe of the new left is about. They truly are dyed-in-the-wool Marxists, and they are prepared to die on any hill to achieve their ultimate goal. And their ultimate goal is sheer, unadulterated Marxism. It always has been. We continue now with Senate Majority Leader Chuck the Schmuck Schumer tried for the nuclear option to change the long-standing rule after the GOP used the filibuster to block sweeping voting rights legislation pushed by the Democrats, but the measure failed 52-48. Again, I have to take issue with the language there. It's not a voting rights legislation. It's centralization of voting governance, electoral governance. That has always been in the hands of the state. Constitutionally speaking, that has always been in the hands of the state, and this is an attempt to essentially encroach upon the tenets of federalism, thereby violating the 10th Amendment and violating Article 1 of the Constitution. This is typical. This is typical. Because deep down, we know that they loathe and despise the Constitution. This is because they see it as standing in the way of their plans of expanding power and of maintaining their power, irrespective of what the people want. They want an oligarchy. And we can see this from all of the Build Back Better schemes, from the Supreme Court packing scheme that they have floated, all of these quasi to full-on totalitarian measures that really have no place in an open and honest, but above all, free society. That's what they're pushing. So again, I take a little bit of umbrance with their language. But anyway, it failed 52-48. Democrat Senators Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona voted with Republicans against the talking filibuster change, which would have effectively let Democrats wait out the GOP filibuster and pass the voting legislation with a simple majority. The current rules require 60 votes to end a filibuster, a figure that was out of reach for Democrats in the evenly split Senate amid staunch Republican opposition to the proposed legislation. Despite Manchin and Sinema reiterating their opposition to changing the filibuster rules, Schumer from New York insisted on getting every senator on the record regarding the doomed effort. I love it. I love it. Why? Because he's a fool. He's a fool. He thought that he could essentially bully them into accepting his approach. It's not going to work. I am profoundly disappointed that the Senate has failed to stand up for our democracy, except we're not a democracy, we're a republic. I am disappointed, but I am not deterred. We will continue to advance necessary legislation to push for Senate procedural changes that will protect the fundamental right to vote, Biden said. And yet, in his half of century in government, he never once did. In fact, he used the filibuster and supported it when it helped his side, when they were not in power. So, it's all kabuki theater. The article goes on, it says, make no mistake, win, lose, or draw, members of this chamber were elected to debate and to vote, particularly on such an important issue as this, Schumer said on the Senate floor Wednesday morning. And win, lose, or draw, we are going to vote. And so they did, and he lost. Thereby weakening the Democrats' position even further, thereby showing that they do not have their finger on the pulse of the American people. And they never have. They never have. Top Democrats, including President Biden, had ramped up pressure on Manchin, Sinema, and other potential holdouts for weeks, insisting the one-time carve-out to the 60-vote rule was necessary to, as Schumer put it, protect the cornerstone of our democracy. In this body, the proponents of our democratic rights again and again have brought legislation to the floor only to be met by a filibuster, Schumer said. Hey, Schumer, Chucky, have you ever stopped to think that maybe that's by design? that maybe these things were implemented to prevent you from having an ideological takeover? Food for thought, you moron. Opponents of fair and open elections filibustered anti-poll tax legislation in 1942, 44, and 46. Yeah, they were Democrats that did that, by the way. Just so you know. They filibustered the Civil Rights Bill of 1960. Yes, also Democrats. And they filibustered legislation on literacy tests in 1962. Also Democrats. All this before real substantive progress was made. Our struggle today is not new, but we must nevertheless meet it with renewed conviction. Oh, keep whining, Schumer. Keep whining. Acknowledging that his maneuver faced certain defeat, Schumer concluded his floor speech by vowing that Democrats would keep pushing, keep working, and keep fighting long after today, because this issue is so important to us all. Oh, so in other words, they're going to double down on the same malarkey and nonsense that they have been pushing. And no, Joe Biden does not get to claim that word. No. Although, he could if he was using it to describe himself and the stuff that he's pushing. Now we come to the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell. He responded by accusing Schumer and the Democrats of trying to smash the Senate, silence millions of Americans, and seize control of our democracy. Again, I hate that they use that, but it's, at this point, losing battle. But no, we are not a democracy. It goes on, please note that even in the Democrat leader's manufactured case, even when he presumably wanted the most persuasive theater he could possibly muster, the Senate will only have spent about a day and a half on this bill before he tries to ram it through. Since when does the Senate pass any significant bill in a day and a half, much less a gigantic elections overhaul? Well, they always try. They always try when it comes down to it being some strong-arming that they're doing. It's typical of them. Our colleague is not trying to conclude an unending discussion that he cannot stop, McConnell added. He is trying to short-circuit a debate that he cannot win. This is just the kind of short-sighted power grab this body was built to stop. For once, McConnell said something right. Good Lord. Any potential drama was taken out of Wednesday's vote, January 13th, after Sinema and Manchin reasserted their support of the filibuster, calling it a vital tool of the Senate needed to prevent political whiplash. For the last year, my Democrat colleagues have taken to the Senate floor, cable news airwaves, pages of newspapers across the country to argue that repealing the filibuster is actually restoring the Senate to the vision the Founding Fathers intended for this deliberative body. Manchin said on the Senate floor Wednesday, "My friends, that is simply not true. It is just not true. The United States has never in 233 years been able to end debate on legislation with a simple majority vote." Again, he's right. What this shows, once again, in conclusion, is that our founding fathers had the right idea, and that the system they designed is working as intended. Still, we need to send a resounding message to those in power that we do not like these attempts to essentially destroy the tenets of federalism, and that we want our government to listen to us. Again, it means that we have to be proactive in this coming midterm election this November. We need to show Biden and the rest of the Democrats that their attempt to centralize our elections, to destabilize our quintessential federalist representative republic, will not be tolerated. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you again for choosing to fly over the friendly airwaves with us here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. I hope to see you again next time we set out. Please do take care. See you next time.